The forest stood silent, a wall of trees gnarled and ancient. Sunlight struggled to pierce the dense canopy. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. This was a place forgotten, a place lost to time. And at its heart lay Ashwood Manor. The manor was once grand. Now it was a skeletal husk. Its stone walls were crumbling, windows gaped like empty sockets. The roof sagged, threatening to collapse in on itself. Vines, thick as pythons, snaked their way up the walls, choking the life out of the old house. Ashwood Manor had been empty for nearly a century. No one dared to approach it, no one dared to speak its name, for it was said that the manor was haunted. The spirits of the dead lingered there, trapped between this world and the next. The manor stood alone in the silence, a testament to forgotten memories and unspeakable horrors. It waited, watching. The villagers whispered about Ashwood Manor. They spoke of strange lights seen in the windows at night, and the sound of screams echoing through the forest. Some said that the old manor was cursed, that anyone who dared to enter would never leave.
Old Man Hemlock, who lived on the edge of the forest, claimed to have seen the ghost of Eleanor Ashwood herself. He described her as a woman in a white dress, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes burning with a cold, ethereal light. He said that she wandered the halls of the manor, searching for something she could never find.
The villagers' stories were just that, stories. Tales told to frighten children and keep them away from the forest. But there was something about Ashwood Manor that sent a shiver down the spine. Something ancient and evil lingered beneath the surface. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the secrets of the manor, secrets that were better left buried. Tom, Lucy and Jack were inseparable. They were the kind of friends who thrived on pushing boundaries, on seeking out the next thrill. So when the subject of Ashwood Manor came up, they knew they had to see it for themselves.
They say it's haunted,
Lucy said, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement.
Just stories.
Tom scoffed, though his voice lacked its usual confidence.
Let's go then. Let's see if the stories are true.
Jack, never one to back down from a challenge, grinned. And so the dare was made. A pact sealed under the watchful gaze of the setting sun. They would explore Ashwood Manor. They would face their fears and prove that the stories were nothing more than superstition. Little did they know that some truths are best left undisturbed. The forest seemed to close in around them as they made their way towards the manor. The trees loomed tall and menacing, their branches intertwining overhead to block out the last rays of the setting sun. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the sound of their own footsteps and the frantic beating of their hearts. A gnawing unease settled in the pit of Tom's stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something unseen lurked in the shadows, its eyes following their every move.
Are you sure about this?
He asked, his voice barely a whisper.
Don't be such a chicken, Tom,
Jack said, but even his usual bravado seemed strained. Lucy said nothing, but her grip on Jack's arm tightened. They pressed on, deeper into the heart of the forgotten forest, toward the looming shadow of Ashwood Manor. Each step took them further from the familiar and closer to the unknown. The manor loomed before them, a skeletal silhouette against the dying light. Its broken windows seemed to watch them like malevolent eyes. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of decay and the weight of unseen presences.
This is it,
Jack said, his voice unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. Tom swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. He could feel a cold dread creeping up his spine, but he pushed it down, forcing himself to take a step closer. The rusted iron gates groaned as they pushed them open, as if disturbed after a century of slumber. The front door hung open, inviting them in, or perhaps daring them to enter. They crossed the threshold, and the world outside ceased to exist. The air inside was stale and cold, thick with the smell of dust and decay. Cobwebs hung from every corner, and the only light came from the sliver of moon that shone through the grimy windows. They stepped cautiously into the main hall, their footsteps echoing eerily in the silence.
Hello?
Lucy called out, her voice trembling slightly. The only answer was the whisper of the wind through the broken windows. They moved deeper into the house, their hearts pounding in their chests. The shadows seemed to dance and shift around them, taking on strange and sinister shapes. As they walked, Tom could have sworn he heard voices whispering their names. Soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. He glanced nervously over his shoulder, but there was nothing there, or so he thought. A cold spot settled in the centre of the room. The air grew heavy, making it difficult to breathe. A low hum vibrated through the floor, shaking the dust from the furniture. And then she was there. A figure materialized in the center of the room, a woman in a flowing white gown, her face obscured by a veil. She stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on them with an intensity that chilled them to the bone.
Who dares disturb my rest?
A voice echoed through the room, cold and sharp as shattered glass. Lucy gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. Jack stumbled back, his eyes wide with terror. Tom stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat. The figure in white glided towards them, her feet not seeming to touch the ground. As she drew closer, the veil lifted, revealing a face twisted in a mask of rage and anguish. Her eyes, burning with an unnatural light, locked onto theirs. And in that instant, they knew that they were in the presence of something truly evil. This was Eleanor Ashwood, and she had been waiting for them. Panic surged through them. They turned to flee, but the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, plunging them into darkness. They were trapped. Tom fumbled for his phone, but the battery was dead. Of course, they huddled together, their backs pressed against the cold stone wall. They could hear Eleanor's laughter echoing around them, cold and mocking.
You cannot escape. This house is mine. And now so are you.
Claustrophobia tightened its grip on their chests. They were trapped in a nightmare, and there was no waking up. The screams of the three friends echoed through the halls of Ashwood Manor. But there was no one to hear them, no one to save them. They were lost, swallowed whole by the darkness that clung to the old house. The villagers still whisper about Ashwood Manor. They say that the manor glows with an eerie light on moonless nights, and that if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint echoes of laughter and screams carried on the wind. The forest surrounding the manor remains silent and still, but deep within its heart, Ashwood Manor hums with a dark energy. The spirits of Tom, Lucy and Jack are trapped there now, bound to the manor for eternity. Their laughter and screams join the chorus of whispers that echo through the halls, a chilling reminder to anyone who dares to approach. Ashwood Manor stands alone in the silence, a tomb for the living and the dead, forever haunted by the echoes of the past.